Adam Thielen, is he like in the top 5 best wide receivers ever?
Probably,
You
definitely.
know,
I'd say
he's got to be like
with the
pretty close
Edelmans
at
and
least.
Wes
Wes
Welkers.
Welker,
But
yeah. All the
but beyond,
Patriots.
yeah, outside of that.
All right, welcome back to the Schlabcast. Andy, Jeff, and Caleb here talking NFC free agency and acquisitions during this offseason time right now. We're just going to kick it off with the NFC North. So the Bears, they made an interesting trade. They actually moved out of the number 1 pick. They moved back to number 9, trading with the Carolina Panthers.
I think they got some solid pieces for not moving down that far, and they don't need a quarterback. I think it was a great move by the Bears. Hopefully, they think DJ Moore can be a starting number 1 wide receiver for Fields. They can still get somebody good at number 9.
Yeah, I definitely think the Bears won that trade. Who knows what is going to happen at number 1? Me personally, if I had the number 1 pick, I'm not really feeling Bryce Young all that much. Watching him at Alabama, I just think he's kind of undersized, but I'm not there at those pro days or seeing him in person, and he could just be, much different when you see him up close.
Yeah, most definitely. I am a little bit higher on some of the quarterbacks, but I believe if you threw in Justin Fields in this draft right now, I think he would be right up there. Plus, you get all those picks as well. So would you rather have Fields and all those picks, or would you rather have one of those quarterbacks?
Absolutely. Great comparison.
Moving towards the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, still technically a Green Bay Packer. There has not been a deal finalized as of yet. It seems like this is going to go all the way to the draft.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about this?
Pretty wild. Not surprised that it hasn't happened yet, I guess. Everything with Rodgers is always such a slow burn. The Jets are going to have to pay so much for this. The longer it goes, the more ridiculous I think the asking price and things are going to be. Unless it's already decided and they're just not saying anything. Seems like a bunch of hullabaloo.
Maybe he just doesn't want to go to the Jets. It could just be my entire career in the NFL. I have watched them suck. I've gone there plenty of times and have played against them in that terrible stadium, and I just don't want to go there. I mean, there's a couple teams I would feel that way if I was a Super Bowl champion who had a Hall of Fame career going into just only his second team. I think I can call the shots, so I don't blame him for holding out, I suppose, but there's not a lot of teams that are going to want to deal with him. So it'll be slim pickings. So he might just be stuck there.
It sounds like from all the reports, it hinges on the Jets' first round pick. And I guess they're unwilling right now. I don't remember what number that is, but they're unwilling to give that up. That's what it seems to be the holdup right now. But it would be funny after all this, like Alan Lazard, and all his Packers teammates start signing with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers of all people doesn't sign. That would be pretty hilarious.
Jets have the 13th.
That would be such a Rodgers dick move. Just be like, hey guys, all sign here, like I'm coming. Nope. Send me to the 49ers.
Assuming he does go, is Jordan Love, you think he's set up to fail?
He's got Aaron Rodgers made that team so much better. I don't remember what their record was. I mean, definitely well below 500. Rodgers fixes a lot of that. He's worth, quite a few wins.
I know it was bad for a while. They were like 4-8 or something like that, 3-8, and they went on like a 5-game winning streak. And then I think they lost that last regular season game.
If Rodgers had injured himself, game before that run, they don't do that with Jordan Love. So that will be definitely Minnesota and probably Detroit fighting for that.
Speaking of Detroit, they did have a handful of acquisitions. One was David Montgomery from their division rival Bears, who's going to be replacing Jamal Williams. They did revamp their secondary. They signed 3 other cornerbacks, Mac McCain, Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley. So definitely they're just trying to shore up the defensive back. And one other thing to note, they did recently sign a former Eagle, CJ Gardner-Johnson, who was actually looking for a big contract on the open market and settled with a 1-year deal, prove-it deal. They're definitely making moves. You guys have any thoughts on those defensive moves or anything like that?
I'd like to see if they can come back and play with that same energy that they had last year. I like Dan Campbell. I think he's a good coach. I think it makes sense that they want to beef up the defense always. Pretty much know what you're going to get with Goff, and Montgomery definitely helps out there. We saw how much it helped when Goff had Todd Gurley back in the day. Things like that. Division is ripe for the taking. I don't think the Vikings are anything special when you still got Kirk Cousins at the helm.
Yeah, I mean, they could absolutely just turn it on even more. And they were one of the top offenses. They're like top 3 in like total yards, I think. So no reason to think they slowed down. They haven't really lost too much outside of Jamal Williams, which was a total fluke. I feel like whoever was there was going to do that. That was not just like a, wow, Jamal Williams, this guy's incredible. It's not like, LT's season, 2005 season or something where he's like scoring, multiple touchdowns every game. It was completely different circumstances, I feel like.
Yeah.
Even though we've been, kind of down talking the Vikings, I still think they're the favorite to win.
Won quite a few games last year. A lot of very close ones. Probably will win 10 games like they always do. I just, I don't know. They're such like a Chargers team to me, like they'll always be there. They'll always be pretty good, but
yeah, they'll beat up on the teams they're supposed to beat up on. But as soon as like a little bit of competition shows up with 8 minutes in the fourth quarter, it's like just absolute shambles. Like they never planned for this.
Yeah. I mean, they like lost by like 30 that one Cowboys game, right? And then they have the biggest comeback, whatever, in the same year. So
that's right.
They're just all over the place. I think they have a good coach, that young guy, O'Connell. Hopefully he can keep Kirk Cousins afloat. I just don't really believe in that guy, especially in the playoffs or in crunch time. I would never bet on his side. Sorry, Vikings fans.
23rd pick. So it's not like they have like, a real shot at grabbing a young quarterback if need be.
Just looking over some other notable moves. Patrick Peterson, he went to the Steelers, and Eric Kendricks, the linebacker, went to the Chargers.
And Thielen went to the Panthers.
Probably one of the bigger moves. How do you guys feel about him leaving his impact on Justin Jefferson?
Adam Thielen, is he like in the top 5 best wide receivers ever?
Probably, definitely. I'd say.
He's got to be like
with the Edelmans and Wes Welkers.
But all the Patriots. Yeah, outside of that, he's kind of a staple just in Viking personnel. I would say like the whole like past decade. I just feel like he's just been one of the main guys, and he's been on everybody's fantasy team. So everyone's just like really wanted him to succeed at some point. So it's hard to, dislike him. But on the other hand, he didn't really produce too much this past year. It took him about like 10 games to really get going and actually fit in somewhere, even with some of those, explosive off the charts games they had. But I don't think it has an impact on Justin Jefferson, because that guy's just a freak in nature. He's just an outrageous player.
It's reported that Dalvin Cook is on the trade block. Some people say possibly the Bills. A lot of people link top running backs to the Bills. They lost Devin Singletary.
The Texans. Texans making moves. Don't you worry, Texans fans. We'll be back soon.
Are you worried?
No.
Are you trying to talk yourself into that? Or is that
maybe just a little bit.
Even onto the NFC South. So we have the Falcons. One of their more notable moves was that they signed Taylor Heineke to a fairly large contract to be the backup. If you just had Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder right now, who do you guys think wins the starting job?
Heineke.
No, I'd say Desmond, but I definitely have like Cincinnati bias. But he came in halfway through the season and then put up like pretty similar numbers to Mariota like pretty quickly. I don't think the Falcons have a lot around him.
There was talk still about them considering Lamar Jackson. Who knows? They did sign safety Jesse Bates, who was a pretty notable name. He was from the Bengals, and then they traded for Jonnu Smith from the Patriots. I thought that was a little ridiculous, the fact that you spent a top 5 overall pick on Kyle Pitts, who you didn't even use at all last year. So I have no idea what their plan is there.
Kyle Pitts, man. What a fantasy disappointment to everyone.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, felt kind of surprising that move with Jonnu Smith. I don't get it. I don't know what the Falcons are doing. You're supposed to get me excited about Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder. Like, I'm sorry, but
they also lost Mariota.
Yeah, to go be a backup somewhere. So
Kyle Pitts did not translate very well into the NFL so far, but that doesn't mean he's a total lost cause. They got a scheme right for him, though. Seems like he should be faster on the field, but playing against NFL linebackers now, he's not just going to outrun and, just outbig them. like he was doing at Florida. We'll see. John Smith's nice insurance, I would suppose. Tight end packages with that.
I remember you said Desmond Ritter in college. I think you said he liked to target the tight end. So we'll see
Oh, yeah.
if this changes. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, the big notable move that we had touched on in our quarterback video, Derek Carr signing that big contract right now to take over the starting job. They did re-sign Jameis Winston to a very cheap backup deal. You have Taysom Hill. I know he is what he is, but he's pretty competent, and you gave him a fairly large contract.
I thought that was a pretty good move. I like Derek Carr. You know, maybe the relationship fizzled out in Oakland, and he went through some like traumatic stuff outside of like breaking his ankle. He then has a teammate completely destroy another car in a high-speed wreck. Then one of his head coaches gets completely like banned from the NFL. Like he's just went through a bunch of weird stuff. It's a great refresh for him. He's a good player.
Yeah. Definitely a good refresh. New home, whole new identity. He's a great leader. Saints clearly needed somebody to come in there and steer that ship. They don't seem to think that it's Taysom Hill. Why not just keep using that guy? Don't try to make him something he's not. Keep using him as a utility guy. Yeah, he might run 8 out of 10 times, but if you can't catch him, then who cares? It might be just what Carr needs with comparison to like Kamara, and see if Michael Thomas can like play more than 2 games in a season.
And then just touching up one more time, because you mentioned Alvin Kamara, back in about mid-February, it said the Las Vegas grand jury indicted him and 3 others in a alleged beating. So there's a good possibility that he's going to be suspended the first 6 games of this upcoming season. Jamal Williams most likely going to be the starting back. So it'll be interesting, because we already talked about Dalvin Cook. I think they might have been in the same draft class, but Dalvin Cook on the trade block, Alvin Kamara kind of up in the air.
Interesting.
You're so rich and you can just stay at home and just have everything there for you. You just go get yourself mixed up in all this stuff. It's just so ridiculous. But anyway,
Panthers.
The Panthers acquired the number 1 overall pick from the Bears. They also got Andy Dalton as their insurance quarterback, and they picked up Miles Sanders as well as Thielen. So they're trying to load up on a little bit on the offense with Frank Reich. But getting back to the number 1 overall pick, do you have any thoughts on who they might draft?
It's looking more like Bryce Young at the moment. I would be okay with that as a Texans fan. I like CJ Stroud the more I've been watching him. But there's no way, exactly like what Caleb's saying, there's no way they trade in to that spot and don't take one of these guys.
There's just too much to give up for a, defensive end or something. It's just weird to do that, or offensive tackle. You wouldn't have to move up to number 1 to do that too. They have to like either Young or Stroud. Me personally, I would take Stroud like 100 times out of 100, and hopefully Stroud goes to a good team, but it has to be a quarterback. It's between one of them two as well.
Just to give some pushback, I would go with Bryce Young, but we'll see. They're neck and neck for me too, but that's where I would go. Well, moving on to the Buccaneers. So they replaced Tom Brady with Baker Mayfield.
As you do.
Very, very interesting step down the ladder there. 2 polar opposites, I'd say, of quarterback status.
I likened Baker to Johnny Manziel, but someone that isn't like a huge head case, because I thought they were just kind of like the same everything else. Just kind of a big overhyped college quarterback that had like an okay arm. We'll see how he does in a Bucs uniform. I don't see him doing that though.
I think he tries, but I just don't know. I just don't know if it works out for him. He tries a hell of a lot better than Johnny Manziel ever tried, and a lot of people for sure tried in a Browns uniform. But now this is like his 4th team in a year. Gonna be interesting. Hopefully, like Carr, maybe he gets a fresh start here. Has a decent coach, has some players around him, a few really good receivers.
Yeah, the receivers should be there, but they released Fournette, Ronald Jones on the Cowboys, and then they lost Cameron Brate and OJ Howard, their tight ends. So
those are definitely losses. Brady used to love those guys.
Right now, Saints are definitely favored to win at plus 125, plus 120 at Caesars.
You guys want to talk about the East or say that for last? Do West right now. Cruise through the West.
Let's just cruise the West.
Got the Cardinals. JJ Watt retires. Talks of D-Hop being traded. Obviously, I think they want to stick with Kyler for now. They lose a cornerback and Byron Murphy.
I thought they would be much better than they were this past year, even with the suspension of Hopkins, but man, they were bad and they're not doing anything to help themselves. Probably will be just as bad, bottom of the barrel in terms of conference, in my opinion.
In terms of JJ Watt, I was just thinking about it right now. I don't know how old he is, but if I'm not mistaken, he had pretty decent production last year. I think he had like double-digit sacks last year, right? I'm just taking a shot at there right now. Do you think he was really retiring? He felt it was his time, or if he really thought they were close, or if he really believed like in Kyler Murray, I feel like he would stay.
Yeah.
And maybe he doesn't necessarily feel like they could win it all, or he believes in this guy, and that's also kind of leading to him deciding to retire.
Yeah. Whether that's like a conscious mental note that he's making or subconsciously, definitely a good topic to bring up. I know he got married like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's definitely probably had a little bit to do with it. But like you said, I thought he definitely still had some left in the tank. That's an interesting point to bring up. Maybe not believing in the system there. They did have that coach fired, Kingsbury.
I think there's some half truth to that. He's pretty banged up. There gets to a point where it's like, I could just like permanently hurt myself. I feel like that he was approaching that too. Anyway, that's definitely enough about the Cardinals.
Yeah. Rams.
Let's move on to the Rams. Okay, here we
Yeah. Lost Jalen Ramsey.
go. No
Like
money,
we
no
said,
picks.
no money, no picks, no players. They sold their soul for that Super Bowl.
Exactly.
We'll see how long it takes them to recover.
There was also a rumor that they were entertaining offers for Stafford too. So Cup and Donald were the only untouchable players.
That's too bad because they're paying those guys a ton of money to not have a good team around them. Let's move on to the Seahawks.
Yeah, all right.
Resigned Geno Smith, one big comeback player of the year. Pete Carroll was at the Ohio State Pro Day.
Yeah. He was at Ohio State's Pro Day along with the GM, which there were quite a few, I guess, that were there. But it's notable when someone of that caliber is at a Pro Day, they're looking at something. Who knows? We could see a Seahawks trade. Pete Carroll's kind of a freewheeler. He can definitely talk some people into some craziness.
They did lose Rashad Penny. I know that obviously because I'm the Eagles fan, but they already drafted Kenneth Walker last year. So
yeah,
he's going to be the bell cow for them.
Had a good breakout year last year too. And then we have the Niners to close out the NFC West.
Yeah, the Niners who had Brock Purdy, took them all the way to NFC Championship, and yet you want to sign Sam Darnold to your team.
That would be the ultimate test if it's the Shanahan system or not. If he can get somebody like that to succeed, those rumors are put to bed for sure.
Brock Purdy, it sounds like he's on schedule.
Yeah, he had the surgery. Yep.
There could be a chance Tim Darnold starts a couple, and they technically still have Trey Lance on their roster too. So who knows how that whole quarterback room shakes out. They did sign Javon Hargrave. He was a big signing. He was, I think, upwards of 80, almost $90 million. He will fit right into that defensive line. They're already stacked as it is.
It's obviously their division versus the Seahawks. We don't really think that the Cardinals or Rams are going to be anything special. We'll just see if Shanahan can make it go with whoever they end up starting. It's going to be an interesting battle.
NFC East, the Washington Commanders, and they started off free agency re-signing D-tackle Daron Payne, and he is currently the highest paid player in the NFL.
That is unbelievable. I guess a lot of faith. You know, Rivera's definitely a big defensive guy, so you want to keep your core intact, but they got a lot of holes. Interesting choice to spend a lot for one guy.
Yeah, for real. If at the beginning of this offseason you said, who do you think is going to become the highest paid player in the NFL? Not one, would not have picked that player, and two, definitely would not have picked the Commanders throwing down money like that. So definitely surprising there. And they pick up Jacoby Brissett too, which got Jake Briscoe.
Yeah, I find Heineke as more of a threat than Jacoby Brissett, personally. Moving over to the Giants, as we mentioned again in our quarterback video, they re-signed Daniel Jones at the very last minute to that huge extension. They also signed Saquon Barkley, or they franchise tagged him. And then the other big notable news was they did trade for Darren Waller.
Trying to beef up that offense a little bit. Giants are a question mark in my head going into this year, because they kind of had a question mark season last year. They were up and down, and they would win some games and you lose games. Not sure about the big contract for Jones.
God, no way. Oh, yeah. As a Cowboys fan, I'm stoked about that, but yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, I think that was way too much for a solid B quarterback.
And Darren
Yeah.
Waller, we'll see how that move plays out. But I guess right now, the Giants, they don't really have that many wide receivers, or at least I feel like Darren Waller is like their main target
Really?
other than Saquon.
They still have Shepard or Slayton, either of those
Slayton, yeah.
guys. But both those guys, those are like slot guys. Waller's more of like a Mike Evans type of guy.
All right. And moving right along to the Dallas Cowboys, I think I will just let Caleb have the floor for this one.
I will begin by saying my most favorite thing about this offseason is that we banished that awful man, Kellen Moore. I never have to look at his stupid face again. Okay, moving on from that. I just could not handle him.
Do you know where he is now? What team he's on now?
Chargers, I
Okay.
think.
Was he the offensive coordinator there, quarterback coach? What was he?
Yeah, he was quarterback coach for a little while. I don't know if he kept that job throughout it all, but then he was definitely offensive coordinator for the past couple seasons. And it was really easy to know exactly what we were going to do for week 1. And then we knew exactly what games we were going to lose by the end of the first quarter because that was the game plan. So
Yeah.
if it was not going well, it was just not going to go well. So
Well, good luck to Justin Herbert.
Yeah,
With
Jesus.
Staley and his time management, and now
I mean, on the flip side, it's now like, oh well, it's McCarthy.
Yeah.
Doesn't get me all excited. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
But Cowboys release Zeke Elliott, which thinking back to that brilliant 2016 season that was wasted away a little bit, in my opinion. That one was a little shocking, but coming from the business side of things, I don't blame them. He just cost so much money. And I definitely think Pollard can step up as a running back 1. Would not be surprised if they spend a high draft pick, maybe even like in a second round or trade back out of the first round to make sure they get a running back top of the second round or something. I think Pollard's great. Kind of a bummer that he hurt himself at the end of the season, but I think he'll come back strong. They made a big trade for cornerback Gilmore, which sure he's later on in his career, but that is a position that you need stability. You can't just have guys just blowing it. Even if he's a step slower, he's still, a step ahead mentally.
Gilmore's a solid player. You're going to get,
yeah,
at least 3-4 picks out of him a year and have pretty good coverage. So I think it's a solid move.
it'll make Diggs better.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking to spend some more money on DeMarcus Lawrence probably in the long run. That whole situation's still a little fluid. And then they restructured Tyron Smith's contract for like the 50th time. I remember I seriously 8-10 years ago, I remember they restructured something. He got like a 10-year deal. And I was looking at God damn, he's going to be playing the 2023 season. Yeah.
Yeah, here we are.
And he's playing still at a high level, which is nice. And then kind of the big news recently, trading for Brandon Cooks, giving up a 5th and a 6th in the long run. I'd rather have Brandon Cooks over whatever receiver we would get out of the 5th or 6th. Cooks is a fine player. He just had to get out of Houston, I think. He sealed his fate there. So, yeah, what do you think, Hef?
Happy to see him gone. He could have gone a little further away. Had to stay in the state, but
yeah, for real.
All good. Whatever.
You don't have to see him for a long time. The bad man's gone.
I think he will complement CeeDee Lamb really well. I think when the Cowboys were on their game too, when they had Amari Cooper and CD, maybe they lost a little bit with that last year, but now bringing back Cooks, it adds another dimension. So
yeah, absolutely. That's why they got him. I think it's a good move for those reasons as well.
And then finally, the Super Bowl contending Eagles. How about that? You want to take us away, Andy? How about you give us a little spiel on what's been going on with them?
So the Eagles, they did make a few notable moves. Obviously, on day one, the biggest move was re-signing Jason Kelce, which is key. I'd argue that aside from Jalen Hurts, he is our best player. Bringing Kelce back was huge. We did release and then re-sign Darius Slay. It seems like he didn't quite get what he was expecting on the open market. I don't think he really wanted to leave in the first place, but then money kind of became an issue, and then I guess it didn't. So he's back again. Rashad Penny coming over from Seahawks. He's going to replace Miles Sanders, who's now on the Panthers, and Marcus Mariota for quarterback is now going to be replacing Gardner Minshew, who I believe signed with the Colts. But I think the bigger thing this offseason is really what we lost. And so we lost 6 starters so far. 5 of them were on defense, one defensive lineman, 2 starting linebackers, and 2 safeties. And we have not really filled those positions. We did lose both of our coordinators, offensive and defensive coordinators. So, we're having a different scheme, and then losing all those starters. So it's definitely going to be a change. We're obviously going to be dependent on our offense this year. I'm still confident in the offense, but I am a little worried about the defense and how that's going to shape out.
Yeah, that's a lot of people to lose. That's a lot of starters, including the coordinating coach. Like you're saying, that's a little bit more under the radar and impact that it will have absolutely on the field, and the pressure, like you're saying, it'll put on the offense.
It's not like you've hit rock bottom or something, but that will be like a completely new look next year. There will be few similarities. So the NFC East hasn't had a repeat division champ since like 2004. Looks like we're going to keep that on rolling. Yeah, so
Yeah.
money on them to win the division. So that kind of takes us through the NFC. I think it's kind of wide open on who favorites to win conference. So I think it may be on division side, who knows, but once you get into the playoffs, it's just the ball could bounce one way, and that really is how the game is decided. And there are some teams, even if they have a big question mark, like the Niners at quarterback, they're still the Niners everywhere else.
Yeah, we'll see. Definitely some moves were made. We'll see what kind of impacts these players will have throughout the year. Plus, we got the draft coming up soon.
Yeah. Well, that about wraps up our free agency talk NFC edition. For Jeff and for Caleb, I'm Andy. Thanks again for tuning in to the Schlabcast.
Shaba Labish.
Shaba.